I really care about like space, right? And when you walk in, and I'm not a designer, right? At all. I'm not an interior designer. I don't know the first thing about design. I'm pretty like I think I'm like decently clean. My wife thinks I'm like super messy, but like I think I'm like decently clean. But I'm not like one of those like incredible like OCD dudes who've like kept their dresser drawer perfect since like 10 since they were 10 years old. I've got friends who like are like obsessive like that, like their closets are all organized by color, and they're like straight dudes, but like they have like these just immaculate experience like stuff that they've set up. That's just like that is not me. I wish that was me. It's not. But I've always really, really cared about experiences. And when you walk into a great restaurant, when you walk into a great hotel, right? When you walk into like a beautiful short-term rental, there's a feeling that you get, right? And I think the feeling that you get often is either it's joy, like it's peace, right? It's excitement. And I always love like bringing like my wife to like a nice restaurant because I know, hey, because of the experience that the restaurant has designed, we're actually going to have like a really good conversation. And the kind of we could have the same conversation on our couch at home and it wouldn't feel the same, and we'd probably be upset at each other, and they probably wouldn't like flow the way that I would want it to flow. But literally, you just change your environment. That's the only change that you make. You're still tired because your kid was up all night. Like you're still starving. You're still just like sick of each other, kind of. But like for some reason, like when you change that environment, the entire conversation is different. And I think that that's what hospitality ultimately is, right? Hospitality is a facilitator of great environments, right? That inspire people to think or do or speak differently. And so that's, I think, what I love most about this industry is people that work in this space have the opportunity to design these experiences to help people feel a certain way. And it's not necessarily about like making sure like the bed is made or making sure that there's like, a complimentary cocktail waiting for you when you walk into your room. All those things are important and great. But I think ultimately what it really is about is designing a feeling and then watching people experience that feeling and know like everything that we've just done is intentional so that we can solicit that response that you just gave us. And that's what brings me about a lot of joy.
I mean, Jacob's going to have a hard time beating that answer, but I think that was what you said there is so important. We had 2 weeks ago, we had Big Noel Dutson from Open Sky in Zion, which is a really nice glamping site, and he has what he calls a glamping golden hour, and it's just
Mm.
basically he wants people when they arrive at 4 p.m. He does not want them to leave the site that evening, just because that's what you pay for. You turn up, you get the amazing kind of entrance way, you get welcomed by the staff there, and then he wants you to be watching the sunset on your first night of your stay. And so all he does, I mean, he puts a lot of thought into it, but the main thing is just making sure that there's some kind of food and beverage available for them on the night that they stay, so that they don't have to go off to a restaurant and miss that glamping golden hour, as he calls it. And it's not about throwing things in people's faces; it's just designing something that kind of nudges people in the right direction, that lets them create their own experience within it, rather than kind of saying, "Here's your experience, deal with it." I think that's kind of very much similar to the kind of point that you were making there.
100%, 100%. Yeah, Jacob, what do you think? I'd love your thoughts, your answer to Nick's
I
question.
actually don't even know what hospitality is. I'm kind of just like waiting in this world. No, well, I think it's funny. Like I smirk because like we always say we're not these things, but as you keep doing, you get closer, right? Like you were staying in a lot of Airbnb, so you got very close to operating, but like as the guest, right? Because you're observing and you're like, wait, I think I could do this. Yeah, it's the same thing with design, right? You're like, I always tell people I know enough just to be dangerous, but not enough to actually do anything. But um, no, I think for me, hospitality is just like it's a little bit of personalization, it's a lot of anticipation and a lot of care, right? And then there's like those three things that kind of make the soup. Like anticipate a guest need, personalize that service, and just like do what you can to instill in the guests that they're going to feel safe and secure and like taken care of. And then those are all emotions, right? And those emotions can be captured through different activities. Like for golden hour, right? Like that's a sense of care, right? Like the guests know like, oh, my basic needs of food and water and shelter are all here, right? So and then he's anticipating that those guests are going to need those needs as they arrive. But what was our phrase of the day? Oh, service is black and white, hospitality is color. So it's just like that's just the flavor of it all. Um, but I'm always like imploring people just to put them in each other's shoes, right? Like if I'm a guest, like I just traveled or I drove and I'm there, and it's like we couldn't control anything up until that guest gets to that doorstep, and that's when the clock starts for us. Like that's when the control comes in, and that's where we can actually like really make things memorable and create these core memories. So just keeping that like in the front of the mind of like that goes back to the experience, the candlelight, the lighting, the music, the sense, like what is happening for that guest. Where in the space, like you should always be thinking about the five senses. You should always be like talking about it, discussing, and like nodding or making that happen for guests. So
We're talking about, creating the space for the guests to have their own experience and have, for example, conversations that wouldn't happen on the couch at home. Is there anything that you can recall in your career, Jacob, that you've done, maybe at one of your hotels, where you've thought, yes, I've nailed this, I've created that space, and I've kind of potentially had a transformational effect on the guests' lives, almost like with, healing relationships?
yeah, I mean, I think I really try to do that. I talked about this on the other pod, but I that really was the driving force behind the Colorful Life and that Portland projection. Like I really wanted guests to take 10 minutes before they went to bed just to like draw with their partner or draw with themselves or whatever that was, and like add their story to the story of Portland or that staff member. So like I really there's a lot of intentions around just like that 10 minutes, and I think that's also the point of turn down service in a way from traditional hospitality is like your turn down service should really like click the guests into that next part of their night, whatever that is. So like I love the little chocolate on the pillow for turn down, but like should we be feeding our guests like sugar and like before like the expectation is like it's the wind down? So I'd like to start questioning some of these like different phases of traditional hospitality to be like, is that actually meeting the goal? Because I think the goal for turn down should be setting them up for going to bed. I think the goal of stayover service should be acknowledging that we've listened to your request during the stay, or like we've learned something about you and we're going to prove that to you during a little gift or a note of stayover service. So I'd actually think that there's room to challenge these traditional hotel processes to make them more meaningful for a guest. And I hope that that's what we bring to Auberge Resorts Hotel Collection, like that we're listening in real time, and that like we're like acknowledging our guests in real time, that we can make these different aspects of their hotel stay a little bit different. So I think it's a lot of that.
Surely that's the only way that the magic happens, right? Because if you just do what has always been done before, you're never going to do anything different. It's never going to stick in the guest's mind. And surely by challenging traditional kind of methods of hospitality, that's probably where kind of Airbnb came from, where glamping came from. There's probably a better way to do this, and we've just sleepwalked into assuming that this is the only way.